Hi guys. Right, I think we're actually I think we're actually live now. I'm just going to check because that was a real mess. Yeah, that looks like we're going live. Right. So what I've just done is I've just spent the last 15 minutes quite happily broadcasting to myself without pressing the button to go live. So, that was fun. Okay, right. We've got quite a lot to cover tonight. I see one or two of you have tuned in already on a couple of different platforms, so that's nice. Um, uh, Welcome to the channel. Obviously, this is the first live stream, and we've already had our first on-air cock-up. So we're off to a flying start. Never mind, these things are sent to try us. Right. So tonight I want to cover a couple of things, and I want to cover small business IT security. But before we get to that, I'm going to talk about children's safety online because this is something that a couple of people have asked me to cover. So hopefully you can all hear me. Hopefully the audio is loud enough. And we'll plough in and get on with it. So I had a situation, and it wasn't recently, it was a couple of years ago, where one of my customers had, I can't remember if it was a relative or a friend's child, something like that, who posted something online and they were getting bullied for it. You would think that it would be a simple process, and I'm not going to name the platform because that's just not fair. And things have moved on. This was maybe 6 years ago. You would think that it would be such a simple process for a parent just to go, excuse me, Mr. Platform, my daughter has done something, or my son has done something, my child has done something, and they've posted online, they're being bullied for it, we need to get that post, video, image, whatever, removed. You'd think that should be straightforward. No, that process was not straightforward. We had to, so let me take you through the steps that we had to go through. We had to, first of all, make a police report about the bullying and get a crime reference number. That crime reference number had to be passed on to the platform in a form that we had to download. Now, that form was about 3 or 4 pages long. We then had to isolate the exact URL where the offending item was. And we then had to fill all that in, send it off to the platform via their contact email address, and then we had to wait. And we had to wait nearly 2 weeks before anything was done. We then had a response from the platform to say, yes, that's absolutely fine. They've verified who we were or who the parties involved were, and they were quite happy to pull down this offending item online. That then took a further week. So this person was being bullied for 3 weeks while this process was going on. This was shared on other platforms that we then had to approach and go through very similar processes to get that removed as well. So I'm going to talk tonight about how we prevent this from ever happening, or trying as hard as we can to prevent it from happening. I saw on Facebook recently quite a well thought out poster that people were sharing, and it had all the different apps on that children have been known to install. Now, the thing that was scary was it wasn't just 1 or 2, it was 20 or 30. And there was one in particular which it stuck in my mind because of how dangerous it was. I can't remember the name of the app, and I'm not going to name it anyway, but it allowed children, it seemed to be aimed, they had all the sort of, the usual this isn't for children type stuff on it. But essentially what the app did was it allowed you to record a short video on your phone and share it anonymously or however you wanted to share it. What it doesn't do is it doesn't strip off the GPS data that your phone tags into that video. Now, you can imagine how scary that is. This allows somebody who sees that video to locate where that video was taken within 1 or 2 meters. That's pretty scary stuff. So my advice to parents now, and I do get asked this because obviously I'm in small business, I know the people that I deal with, and I know the staff at the sites as well, and I do get asked all these sorts of questions. So the general advice now is, first of all, know exactly what your child is doing online. If that means taking their phone off them at night so you can check while they sleep, then go for it. I'm going to cover that again in a sec because that's a good idea for 2 reasons. Know try and understand and make sure that your child knows. Talk to your child and let them know that you are there if they have a problem online, that you will be approachable and you will get something resolved. Know that they can, so that they know that they can always talk to you if there is a problem. I would personally keep internet access. So I'm going to go through a couple of technical ways in which you can deal with this. Some of the really obvious stuff, though, would be just to put the PC that they're using or laptop in a public area in the house. So put it in the living room and make sure it's at an angle where anyone walking through that room or coming into that room can see exactly what is on that screen. And that will make them slightly more cautious about what they're doing, make them think a little bit more about what they're doing. And also, if you see anything going on, you're right there and you can step in. I would personally take a phone off of a child overnight, because first of all, it allows them some respite from the phone. It gets them off the screen for a couple of hours while they sleep. It also gives you an opportunity to go through the phone, and I don't mean spy on your children before any of you start. I mean go through, see what applications are installed, and that will give you an idea of if there is anything going on. So are they sharing videos with their friends? Are they sharing videos anonymously? What platforms they're using? There was even the other scary thing was there was even an application designed excuse me. And so on the phone screen, it looks like a calculator app, just an everyday calculator. But in reality, it's almost like a Trojan horse. So inside this calculator app that looks quite innocuous was the ability to share videos, pictures, sound files, make calls, send messages. So it was a fully featured hidden app. Now that's pretty scary stuff. So you need to be aware of these things and keep up to date with it. A quick Google search will show you what the latest and greatest are. So I think taking phones off people, off children particularly. When we got bullied at school, it would stop at 3:30. When the bell went, that was it until the next day. You had 8 or 9 hours, 10 hours rest in between. So you could, perhaps it was slightly easier to deal with. Children today, it doesn't matter if they're at school or not, because they're going to get bullied via all sorts of online platforms. There's just nowhere for them to escape to, and we need to be doing more. And I'm not just saying the parents. I'm saying there should be more technical controls available. There should be more advice available. There should be more people that you can turn to. I think quite highly of the police force, but when it comes to cybercrime and reporting and understanding technical details about how things are happening, yeah, my dealings with them, where I've had things happen at companies, is quite frankly shocking. There's just nobody there who can deal with it. You get referred to places like Action Fraud, who take notes and give you a crime reference number and do nothing else. So I think we need to be getting together more as adults and coming up with more technical solutions in order to keep children safe online. I think we should be putting more pressure on companies to keep children safe online as well. God, excuse me. Going back to the technical measures, there are some really good apps you can install on mobile phones and on PCs, which will monitor, not so much monitor, but they will cut off access to known dodgy websites and bad applications. Now, normally they're done on a category basis, so you go in and you tick a load of categories as to what you want your child to be able to access and what you don't want them to be able to access. I would also think about putting on some sort of family tracking application on your phones, because if your child goes missing or doesn't come home when they're supposed to come home, that gives you the ability to track their mobile phone and it will give you their last known location. That can only be good. So that's another thing that can be done. If you don't like the idea of an app, or you've got a technically savvy child, then I would think about installing good grief, this is thirsty work. I'm going to take a swig of coffee. And I would think about particularly a hardware firewall. So this does the same job as the app, except it sits as the internet gateway. Without that firewall, you're not getting on the internet at all. What that'll do is it will sit there and it will look at all the internet traffic coming in and out, and it will block off according to what you've set or what somebody else has set. If you've had somebody come and install it, you can go through a list of categories and tick all the categories that you want, and you can exclude websites via URL or IP address. If that website is in the block category or the IP address is on the block list, they're not going to see it. End of. Go with a company. There are a lot of reputable companies out there. I'm not going to name them. A quick internet search will tell you, and you can look at the reviews yourself. That's not what we're here for. But a reputable company will be updating. So the way these categories will report back to the company, and it will give the router or firewall a list of all of the different websites that come under that category that they've categorized. Now, a reputable company will be updating that on a daily basis. So that is really very much worth looking at. You can also, with a lot of internet gateways nowadays, you can specify and cut things off at specific times. So you can set up the internet comes on at 7 o'clock in the morning and it shuts off at 10 o'clock at night. And you can do that not on certainly some of the kit that we've seen coming through. You can do that not just on a complete basis, so you don't just lop everything off of the internet between those times. You can specify devices. So you take the unique, each device has what's called a MAC address. It's like a hex coded number. You can put that into the router and that device will then get lopped off at those times. That can be quite a powerful feature, especially if you've got young children. So that's something well worth looking at. I think I did see, I'm trying to think of the firewall that I saw with that built into it. It was either a WatchGuard or it might have been a Juniper. It was one or the other. But I thought then that's a really, really neat feature to have. So I'm going to leave it there for children. Love them. We're dreading it. We've got a niece who is now two and a bit. And we noticed the other day that when she was watching something on YouTube on someone's phone, and they had a message come in, but she knew straight away to dismiss the message so she could continue watching her video. And I thought, that's kind of scary in itself, because this generation that's just being born now is going to grow up not knowing a world before the internet, before smartphones, before Alexa and all these other things that we've got. So that was quite an eye-opener. The other thing I will say is that we are seeing, so children coming out of schools, we're seeing them as they come into the workplace, and that can be a minefield in itself. Just going to adjust the compressor a little bit. Sorry about that. So children coming out of school now and going into the workplace, what we're seeing, they're coming through and they're very good. They can work computers and they can deal with software and they know how to do things. What they don't understand so much is the feeder topics. How does this work? Where does this data go? What am I giving away? And I think this is a valuable lesson for all of us, because we all use these platforms. We don't necessarily, who reads the 57-page agreement to say that you sign your life away? Nobody. So we do need to understand exactly what data they're taking. If somebody's giving you a platform free of charge, the chances are you're probably the product. So people like Facebook, Google, not so much YouTube, but certainly Facebook and Google are well known for mining data. Google keep all sorts of information on you, to the point where you can actually go to Google and say, I'd like to see my file. And that's a real eye-opener. It's an absolute ton of data that they keep on you. So we do need to be aware of what we're giving away. There was I read a wonderful case study of a chap, a couple of stories. So there was one chap who was, and we're going back to the days of MySpace. Who else remembers MySpace? And what he was trying to do was meet women. So what he did was he went on a few dates and they were all pretty terrible. So what he did was he took Spam Assassin, which is the email filtering tool, and he fed in the data from the good dates that he'd had and the bad dates that he'd had. And then he ran it against every profile on MySpace. So he was basically just spamming the people that would be bad dates, and then it just left him with a list of ones that would be good dates. There was another chap, and this was a bit darker, or it could have been a lot darker. The chap was actually from Sophos Security, and what he realised was that on some of the dating applications online, the profile pictures of the members, and he wasn't a member, he was just browsing the site purely in the interests of research. And what he discovered was that the profile pictures hadn't been stripped of GPS data. So the idea of using a dating site would be to put a layer in between you and potential dates. What he discovered was that from anybody's profile picture that had been taken with a smartphone or a GPS enabled camera, it would tell you where that picture was taken within plus or minus 2 meters. So yeah, very scary stuff. And we need to understand these things when we're going to start using them. So we'll leave that there. I'm going to move on to more traditional security stuff now, and something that I've actually been doing today. I just want to cover something very quickly. So if you run a business, and I'm talking, you've got a couple of PCs and an internet connection of some sort, I would venture nowadays that you really shouldn't be running a router anymore. I think you should have, or if you are running a router, you should have a firewall as well. Now, I've noticed in the trade that the term firewall and router are being used almost interchangeably, and they're very, very similar devices. They both, a firewall, they can both be configured to do more or less the same thing. They both route information in certain ways. I'm just going to quickly cover the biggest difference between the two. A router will take a packet of data from this network and throw it onto this network, with one being the internet and one being your private network. So you've got a route between the two, hence router. A firewall is slightly different. Now, a firewall has... Okay, now let's just take a step back. A router will also allow you to put in some rules. So it has firewall capabilities. And I use that loosely because, to be honest, the routers that I've seen, the firewall in them is pretty poor. So some routers have some firewall capabilities. Now, the big difference between a router and a firewall is the processing power that a firewall has. So a firewall will take... So a router will start to... If you start to put firewall rules on there, so this machine can access this website, this machine can't. If it's got this URL, you can't go to it. Once you get a few rules in there, you'll notice that your internet connection speed starts to drop off, and that's where the router's trying to process these firewall rules. It can cope with one or two, but any more than that, it's going to have some issues. Now, when you go to a firewall, firewalls have got a lot more processing power. They've got more RAM. They've got often hard disks built into them. For example, I've just fitted one for... It's a Sophos firewall, and that had an i7 processor in it. I mean, that's a lot of processing power. But what that can do is it can process a ton of these different rules, really quite granular rules, and it can still route the information, and it can do other clever things to keep you safe. So a firewall will have some kind of intrusion prevention system. It will have the Sophos ones, particularly if you have the top license for them, will do spam scanning. They'll do perimeter antivirus protection. They will do network routing, all these different things. Now, the difference in cost, yeah, there is a difference in cost. There's no getting around that. I've seen entry-level firewalls from WatchGuard and places like that for about between £300 and £500 for the entry-level stuff. If you want to go big and better, then yeah, the price goes up a little bit. What I will say is that for the protection that they give you, that outlay is actually pretty reasonable. We've had a couple of places recently who have switched, and okay, it's happened at the same time that they've gone to fibre, or they've got a lease line or something like that, and they've then decided, or I've said to them, look, okay, actually we're getting more stuff coming into the network, so we've got email coming in, we've got, you want to enable VPNs, you want to enable this, that, the other. and we've got more users here that we need to. It normally comes in when people start saying, "Look, can we restrict Facebook on this PC, or can we do this? Can we do that?" Yes, we can, but that's the point where we really should be thinking about putting in a firewall. And the couple of customers that I've had that have actually gone across to firewalls, the internet connection speed has gone, has gone up because the firewalls themselves are better devices. They've got more grunt, they've got more processing power, they can shift more packets of data. So they found that from their point of view, from a day-to-day user point of view, the speed of the network's gone up. But from my point of view, the protection of the network's also gone up, because all of a sudden now viruses are being stopped at the gateway. But not all of them. Some are going to get through. We can also do very granular, this PC can access this category or these categories. This PC can only access this category. And we can go right down to that sort of level. This PC here can access Facebook between these hours, but not between these hours. This group of PCs can access YouTube between these hours, but not between these hours. That is fantastically granular control. We can do that on either a device basis or we can do that on a user basis. So we can integrate the firewall with Active Directory on the Windows server. Oh, excuse me. Oh, it's live. So we can do that by integrating the firewall onto Active Directory, and then we can say this user can access these categories or this user can't access these categories. Even if they log into somebody else's machine, they will still only be able to access the categories that we've enabled for their user object. So it gives you these controls. You're never going to get that on any router that I've seen. But like I say, there is a cost to it. So that's the first kind of line of defense. Businesses these days have to realize that all the nasty stuff, in fact, to run a business these days, you have to be connected to the internet, and the internet is basically the Wild West. And not everybody believes us when we say that. So we need to be aware. A lot of business owners also have coming there. I don't want to stereotype people, but they're kind of the people who computing came into their lives at a later age. So, for example, I started computing when I was probably 10 in a serious way, but I'd had 10 years without computing. Some of the people coming through and running businesses now have, they're in their 50s and plus. So they haven't got the same grasp of the internet and what it's capable of and what happens and how it works. So that's partly why I say we should be putting in firewalls and we need to do this protection. Now, the problem with small business is that there's no money, or there's not no money. There's less money than there is in other in larger companies. So if you go into them and say, okay, you've got this big hairy internet pipe, you've got fiber coming in, and this opens you up to this, and this, and yeah, we can sort that out, we can protect that, but there's a cost, and that cost is going to be £1,000 plus a bit of labour to install it, plus your internet connection is going to be down for an hour while we set the rules up, and then we need to know what rules, and so on and so on and so on. Oh, no, can't afford it. Guaranteed. Absolute first answer. Can't afford it. No, not worth it. No. Our router, our internet service provider gave us a router and it's all configured. We just plug it in. Now, let's fast forward a couple of months. We've been crypto locked. All of a sudden, the price of that firewall seems very reasonable. So we do try and suggest to people that they do need to think about these things, ideally before they lose all their data from Crypto Locker or one of the other nasty things going around. Brings us neatly on. Antivirus on PCs used to be optional, used to be nice to have. So I'm just going to close one thing up here and that one there. Right, so antivirus used to be a nice to have. Sadly, that's no longer the case. I'd say now you just can't think about running a system without antivirus on anymore. We tend to use, there's a couple that we use. Kaspersky's been very good for us. We've had great results from that, to be honest. The other one is Komodo and Sophos. We are a Sophos reseller. That's how, we are a partner with Sophos, and that's what we do. We like Sophos. It's not the cheapest, I'll be plainly honest with you, but it integrates with their firewall. So if you have a Sophos firewall and Sophos antivirus, they all talk together, and that can do some very clever things for a network. Believe it or not, I still get moaned at, and people still roll their eyes when I say, look, antivirus is expired, or is expiring, doesn't work. People say, oh, well, we'll leave it till it expires. Really? And your antivirus is expiring, it's going to cost you, you've got 10 PCs, that's going to cost you, conservatively, let's say, unless you get a special deal from the antivirus company for a renewal, which happens occasionally, 10 PCs, you'd be looking around about the 300 quid mark, something like that maybe, for a decent antivirus. Oh, can't afford that. No. You can tell it's bad when things get so bad that Microsoft has to include something in their operating system that they're not going to make any more money for. You know things are pretty bad. Now, when Windows 10 came out, in fact, slightly before that, Microsoft started releasing. There was, first of all, Microsoft Security Essentials, and then that got rounded up into Windows Defender. Now, that is free of charge. It's supplied with Microsoft systems. It's a really kind of low-level antivirus. It will catch the major things, but it's going to miss quite a lot of stuff. Now, when they feel forced to do that, you know that things are getting pretty bad. So nowadays, you have to have an antivirus. There's just no other way around it. We've had sites where people have been crypto-locked, and it's just no fun. It really isn't. You can't get your files back unless you've got a good backup. There really is no coming back from it. So we do insist that people have an antivirus. And like I say, Kaspersky do some amazing deals. If you can plan, if you're not bothered about hitting your renewal date dead on, if you want to do it a couple of months before, so you've got a couple of months to wait, Kaspersky do some amazing deals, and you can get that quite cheaply. That said, if you want the best, then you'd have to go a long way to beat the Sophos product lines, especially if you've got a Sophos firewall in place as well. They're very, very good. And like I say, they talk together and do all sorts of clever stuff behind the scenes. You really must. So you've got your antivirus, you've got your firewall. You've got to train your users, people. It's no good saying, there's a PC, off you go. Every user inside a company, no matter how big that company is, needs to know what they can and cannot do on the corporate network. I have had people install software. Oh, it's fine, I use it at home. Okay, well, just because you use it at home doesn't mean you can install it on a corporate machine. We need to go through, you need to understand what it's doing, how it works, and what data is it going to give away. Now, we had this when MSN Messenger came out. People were installing MSN Messenger. Oh, it's great. I can talk to my friend across the office. Oh, we use it for inter-office talk. Great. But when one of your disgruntled employees takes a couple of your files, like your main database, and sends it via MSN Messenger out to somebody in the outside world, we've got no way of tracking that. We don't even know it's happened. That port got blocked pretty quickly on that network when they realised. So we just need to understand a little bit. We need to train our users. You can do this, you can't do that. Please don't give away this information. You can take that. What I normally do with my users is we have some user access policies, and it's generally a page of A4, lists out what they can and can't do. If they have different permissions during lunchtime, so if you're going to allow them to go on Facebook during their lunch break, that's absolutely fine. Your company, your decision. But we put it all into a form, and they sign the form, and one of the directors signs the form to say that they've been given that talk. They know what's acceptable. They know what's not acceptable. gives you a little bit of comeback then. If they start playing up, I mean, if you don't do this and a user starts accessing Facebook halfway through the day or spends half their day on Facebook, which has happened, watching YouTube videos, you know, it's fine if it's hours, that's okay. But if you don't have a signed agreement and you haven't told them what's acceptable, you've got very little chance of telling them you can't do that. I mean, you can tell them, but you certainly can't take it any further than that. If they've signed a form, then you can give them a disciplinary, you can give them a written warning, you can go down those routes. It opens all this up to you. Believe it or not, we've had it go a step further, where somebody has got a virus whilst accessing a personal website. It's infected the network. It's cost the company a fortune for have, you know, an engineer or two engineers come in. They've lost data. They've got an IT bill they weren't expecting. Believe it or not, if you get a virus on your network and you don't have up-to-date antivirus, you don't have a decent firewall in place, then unfortunately that becomes chargeable. If you've done everything you can to protect yourselves and it's something new, then generally, okay, we'll try and help you out as much as we can. If it's just blatant, someone's done it, sorry, you're going to get charged. That sounds harsh, but we've got to make a living. And the amount of time involved, you wouldn't believe the amount of time it takes to sweep up a good network infection. If you get BitLockered and it infects all of your server data, we could have to reinstall the server, we could have to reinstall machines. In fact, we do. If we get a machine with BitLocker on now, we don't even bother with it. We rip the drive out, we replace the hard disk, and we reinstall everything. That's 3 hours work straight away. If you have to install a server and set the machines back up to access the network and recover the data from a backup, then that's you can be in big money fairly quickly. So we do need to train our users, and that training should be repetitive. I don't mean do it every day, call them into a meeting, but perhaps once every month or once every 6 months at the laxest, every 6 months. You have a general meeting, or you sit them down one by one, perhaps at their annual review or a 6 monthly review, staff meetings, whatever, and you just whiz over the points. Please don't use Facebook during work hours. Please don't use your work laptop to access porn sites when you go home. Please don't send information via unsecure channels. The amount of people that we have that when their corporate email goes down, instead of giving us a quick call and saying, the email's gone down, can you have a quick look? Normally we can fix it fairly quickly. They decide for half a day they'll just use their personal email and send out a load of company files and, user training people. The last line of defence in your small business network is your backup. Now, I don't know what the deal is, but people just do not want to spend money on backup. They don't see it as necessary. They don't think it's worthwhile. They just don't get it. So you get CryptoLockered, which I go on about CryptoLocker, but it's the nastiest thing out there, let's face it, at the minute. I'm sure there'll be something else coming along soon. We need something to restore from. If your files are encrypted, I'm not going to decrypt them. I'm not a code cracker. And to be honest, some of the codes that the CryptoLocker guys are using, you could be there a month of Sundays. You need a backup. Now, we used to use Microsoft Server Backup, Windows Server Backup. So all of your data sits on your server, and then we come along, the server runs a bit of software which comes with Microsoft Server. Not often you get freebies, but this comes with it. It's a good, decent image-based backup. And all it does is it takes your server with all your data on and squirts it onto an external hard drive. You then take that drive home and you plug another one in. What could be easier? Well, it turns out that that's not fully, not the greatest backup in the world. So what we've been doing recently is we did a lot of research into this, and we decided that we needed to come up with a better on-site backup solution. And we needed to come up with some sort of cloud-based backup solution. Now, I've been a bit anti-cloud. So, anyway, let's run over the on-site stuff. We switched from Microsoft to Veeam. We use Veeam. They do a wonderful free bit of software. In fact, if you just bear with me a sec, I'm going to transition across and let's just go into that one. It's called Veeam for Microsoft Windows Free Edition. Free, I know, fantastic, huh? You can just download it from the website. It's really straightforward to set up, and it works really well. So it's exactly the same thing. You have your external drive plugged into the server. You have the Veeam agent for Microsoft Windows running on the server. Every night that server copies all the data across onto the external hard drive. You then unplug the drive, take it home the next day, plug another one in. The advantage of running Veeam, this particular version of Veeam, is that inside this there's what's called notifications. So one of the big things that we have is going to site where, first of all, if we need to monitor a backup, we need to log into the server. Okay, that's fine. We need to then open up the backup software. We need to wait for that to populate. We need to see what the status of the last backup job was, because the Microsoft stuff just does not tell you. You have to physically go into the software to know. With Veeam, it emails us every day, ping, backup's done. And it gives you the server name, the location, the backup status, and if there's a failure. We can just scan through our email now. Oh, failure, right, log into there, we'll get that sorted. The other thing it does really well that the Microsoft stuff didn't do very well was that it compresses the backup, and it does, so you do one full backup and then the rest of them are incremental backups. So you end up with a history, and it doesn't eat up all your disk space, and it doesn't take 5 hours every night for the backup to complete. It just whizzes across the changes, and it works so well. I can't say enough about it. The other thing you can do with Veeam that you can't do with the Microsoft inbuilt solution is you can squirt it at a NAS, you can squirt it into the cloud, you can squirt it onto an external hard drive, you can put it on a thumb drive if your backup's that small, you could send it to another network share on a different server. Everything's possible. It's just a really, really, for free as well. I mean, they make their money with the more advanced products. When you start moving up and you get to become a medium-sized business, then perhaps there's going to be a better Veeam product for you. It also allows you, with the next level up of the software, you can actually back up a VM server. So if you've got a physical server with VM running on it and perhaps 4 or 5 different servers running on that physical hardware, it will allow an agent to be installed inside the VM, which will then back up all these machines at a VM level for you. Really, really clever stuff. So the way we use Veeam, we tend to, on the smaller sites, up to perhaps 6 or 7 terabytes, we just use external hard drives. No, sorry, that's wrong. Up to 2 terabytes. We do have one that's running 4 terabyte backup with Veeam on 2 external hard disks. So we have 3 external hard drives. They're just plugged in one after the other. So one goes in on the first night, Veeam does its backup, that goes out the next day, the next one goes in, Veeam does its backup, and then so forth and so forth. And that just rotates. We didn't use Veeam for the cloud-based backup because we went with a different company, and the name completely eludes me, but it's a very similar vein. So we install a piece of software on the servers or on any machine that you want. We provision the backup software, the cloud chunk of storage that you need. I'm getting my words out. Then every night, again, just the changes get sent across your internet connection. We do it at night because generally people want to go home at 5 o'clock, 5:30, aren't they? Part-timers. Here we are still working, and it's getting quite late now. But every night when the people go home, the internet connection is basically not doing anything. So we use it for backup. We'll send out the backups to these cloud providers. Again, we get reporting back from that. We have a panel here that we can see. It tells us all the different servers that we've got backing up, what their latest status is. We can even go in and make changes to the backup systems directly from our panel here. And it lets us know immediately if there's a problem. Really, really good system. And all of these things, if your hard disk is off-site, if your backup is in the cloud, CryptoLocker can't get it. Your data is safe. I'm very grateful, and I say this touching wood, that we haven't had anyone fully lose all of their data to CryptoLocker yet. We've had a couple that have come pretty bloody close. And believe me, the backups are the things that gives me the most sleepless nights. If I have a backup that's failed for 2 or 3 or 4 days because of various things, I start to get quite panicky about it. I don't like that feeling. It's got to be sorted out. But some customers, you'd be amazed. They just don't get it. They don't see what the point is. You know, I suppose because I'd like to say our systems, but that's just luck. With decent hardware and decent people looking after that hardware, your problems on your network become few and far between. So as far as they're concerned, that data's always been, it's been there for 10 years, that data on that server. But yeah, but it can disappear in an instant. You know, it can just boom, gone overnight, and not even overnight sometimes, in a matter of seconds, boom, gone. So you do have to protect yourselves, and I'm not just talking about nasty little people coming into your network to lock all your files up. I'm talking about if there's a disk failure. We've had that on servers where disks have failed. We had one server, and to this day I've never got to the bottom of what happened to it. I know what happened to it, but I don't know why it happened. We had one server and it got hit with a power surge. Now there was a power company making some holes in the road outside. But a chap come in the morning and his server didn't boot up. Didn't think much of it. He called me in. I went down to look at it and press the button. Doesn't work. I'll take it away and that and see what we can do. And initially when I looked at it, I thought, well, it's got a RAID 5 array in here. So there's 3 disks, 3 hard disks. And when I looked closely at those 3 hard disks, they were all damaged. I mean, that's... Normally you could get 1 hard disk damage, maybe 2, but 3. I mean, I've never seen that in 30 years of working in IT. I've never seen that happen. 25 years, not that old. So he had 3 damaged hard drives. We replaced the hard drives and thought, wow, that's probably going to be the problem. And the machine, we installed Windows. Well, we half installed Windows, and then the machine rebooted. What's going on here? We know the hard disks are good. We just put them in. We then got to run some analysis on the motherboard. So we actually replaced the motherboard because we thought, well, that's the next logical step. It's got to be the disk, perhaps the disk controllers of Kaputski on the motherboard. So we replaced the motherboard. Same thing. Anyway, to cut a long story short, the power surge had taken out one of the rails on the power supply, the motherboard, the processor, the RAM, and the hard disks. Completely annihilated the system. Luckily, he did have a backup. It wasn't a complete backup because there was a few issues. But we did manage to get a lot of the data back in that particular instant. Never seen that happen before, and I hope never to have to see that happen again, but I'm sure it will. These things do happen. But we do push quite hard on backups because that's one thing that you just cannot do without in this day and age. With stuff going wrong, you need to have it. It's not... The thing is, I was talking to a security guy the other day, an IT security specialist, one of the guys that we look up to, and he made it very clear that it used to be a what if my network gets attacked, what if my hard disk fails, particularly with the network attack, which was where he was coming from. He said, it used to be what if. He said that's not how it is anymore. It's now when my network gets attacked. And that made me think, and it's true. It is very, very true. Now it's not an if, it's a when. And we need to be prepared for that. And if you're running a small business, you do need to think about it. There's no way around it anymore. It's just a must. You have to have backup, you have to have antivirus, and you should really be considering having a firewall. I think that pretty much covers everything I was going to cover. I don't think there's any, there's not many people in the live stream, but then we're just starting. It's, day one. Can't really expect anybody, can you? So if you're watching this, because this will be available now on YouTube for the next, 10 billion years. So if you're watching it and it's not 50 years in the future and I'm dead, we'll be doing this every Wednesday, 7:30. We're going to try and do a live stream. We're going to try and pick a topic, and hopefully as time goes on, the chat will get more and more populated, and we'll have some Q&A and things like that. I'm going to try and get some other people on as well. I know a few people in the trade. I'm going to try and bend a couple of customers' ears as well, because I've got 1 or 2 customers that would be quite good, entertaining guests, I think. One guy, I won't say that, we'll come to that, but I'm going to try and get some guests on as well. If there's anything you want to know, I do have an email address, which I'm quite happy to give out because it's related to the channel. So if you want any questions answered, or you want, no, let's not put it that way. I'm not going to get into answering questions over email. That's just a rod for my own back. All my customers have got my work email address, and that's one thing. If you want to suggest a topic for the channel, or you want to have a chat to me, then if you email me, it's rupes@justrupes.com. That'll come straight through to me, and we'll try and get, questions answered, or we'll do it on the channel. We'll come up with some ideas. So every Wednesday at 7:30, I'll be here and doing this. We'll try different topics, and we'll perhaps have some better things. I've got a few cameras rigged up now, and we've finally sorted out the audio, hopefully. So it's not, hopefully, I'm not seeing anything going to clip in front of me. So hopefully the audio will be all right. I've got a few cameras set up here, so we're gonna do a few perhaps bits on the bench as well. We'll do some less theory, less me chatting, and a bit more interesting stuff. Take a computer apart or something, or look inside a firewall. That's always quite good. Don't forget, even if you're watching post live stream, click the bell. No, don't click the bell. You can't click the bell until you click subscribe. So click subscribe and then ring the bell, and then you'll get notified when we go live. I think it's that side. Is it? No, it's that. Sorry, my camera's backwards. It's that side. So click subscribe and ring the bell. Click subscribe, ring the bell. And yeah, we'll see you next week. 7:30, we'll be here. Until then, I should have... I've fiddled it all up now. Oh, it's gone wrong. There we go. Right, that one. Till then, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week at 7:30. Take care, guys.